Okay, glad to have y'all here today. Today we got on a great guest on the Art Talk Show, Marcus Goodwin, DC real estate developer, candidate for DC City Council at large. He ran for office before, he lost, and he's coming back to get what's his. So I had Vita Rashid on earlier this week, who's running for Ward 7 City Council, and hopefully I get Trayon White, who's running for Ward 8. And Marcus Goodwin, I met him at an event at House here on Arts Lab at a performance that I did, and we attend the same masjid for Jumu'ah prayer. We both fast in the month of Ramadan, and the piece that we're going to be discussing today is this piece right here. What's the plan? And this what's the plan is it was an article in the Washington City paper, and I took the article and did a photo poetry piece out of it. And before I can even get a chance to print it into the photo, the quarantine happened. But I'm gonna wait for Marcus to come on at 7, and I'm gonna read the poem, because inside of the print right here is some poetry that's written. And I want to read the poem to you, and then ask Marcus, about his how he feel about it. Okay.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. How you doing?
Good, how you doing, brother?
I'm blessed. Thank you for giving us your time on the show. And I definitely, man, this piece right here, I just was going over it, and I was explaining to the people that I never even got a chance to print it out, because it happened as soon as the quarantine hit. So
Right.
I still just have the original paper that I wrote the poetry into there. So before I ask you how you feel about the piece, I'm gonna read the poem that's in there first, and then let you go.
Okay, great.
Okay. It reads, "You think it's about race until a Jeff Kuhn and Penn Branch calls the police on your black ass. Your black lower income trash is not accepted in this upper class black community. Paper bag tests, your money is too light. Octoroons, protect the darky buffoons. The birth of a nation, intergenerational, George Washington Carver's castration. Behold the pale white horse. Dred Scott is dead. Reconstruction amendments are the 13th, 14th, 15th true lies of social economic mountain climbing, redlining and gerrymandering, porch monkey pandering. Nothing is affordable, not even housing or prayer. Be a good nigga and pay your tithes. The cost of indulgence will not be subsidized. The price to be wealthy in the land of poor souls, rent controls, the fourth right, all hail to the almighty dollar. Debt is credit, but cash is king, in the holy trinity of the IMF, World Bank, and Federal Reserve. Protect and service was never meant to serve the deplorable undeserved. The New Deal only allows Frederick Douglass to be the sole Negro with a house on the hill. Dog parks are more humane than the homeless human's pain. Citizens displaced, communities displaced into Amazon Web Services cloud. Homeowners devoured by ad valorem power. Inflation is the new plantation. What war can be waged by the poor against the citizens united? Super PAC rage. Cosmopolitan created chaos." That's that. So the question I always ask people when they come on the show, when you first saw this piece right here, without even being aware of the article,
Right.
what's the first thing that came to mind?
I love that silhouette of the district you have, the red outlines. I think you highlighted it in your piece, talking about the redlining and the impact that that's had in DC, and really something that we're still facing when you look at the wealth gap, the economic inequality from one neighborhood to the next. When people talk about your zip code you're being born into determining your chances at a successful future, it's not true anywhere more than DC.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an issue that we got to face as the people, as elected officials. And that's among the many things that I'm focused on, but probably the most important, that wealth gap in DC.
As a real estate developer, a black real estate developer in DC that's currently undergoing what we know as hyper gentrification.
Right.
What strategies do you have in mind to take advantage of when you are elected as the DC City Councilman at large in November? What approaching that position, that civic position, with a real estate development background in the midst of gentrification? What are
Right.
some of the things that you have in place to combat that inequality wealth gap?
So what I'll say first is that DC, a city of 700,000 people, has a $15 billion budget on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
Per resident, that's the highest budget in the country.
Hmm.
And of that $15 billion budget, we only give $100 million for gap financing so that community organizations and developers can bid to build affordable housing. But $100 million doesn't build that much housing given the need that we have in this city. So the first thing is increasing that priority by investing more into our affordable housing. We have a housing production trust fund. That's the vehicle we use. We got to double down on our investment there and make it at least double the amount we have, because we need more affordable units for our working class people in the city. Another thing we can do is a more progressive tax structure, meaning if I work full time and I make $40,000 a year and I'm paying 30% of my income back to the government, whereas someone who makes $1 million a year may be able to get down to 15% of their income being paid back, while they're paying a bigger number overall. That 30% means a lot to me making $40,000.
Right.
So I want to ensure that at the lower ends of income, you're able to be taxed at a more preferred rate. Because when you're working class and you make money, what do? You pay your rent, pay your mortgage, you pay your car note, you pay for food, you pay for clothes, pay for essentials. The wealthy typically will save or take their money out of circulation from the economy. And we need more dollars circulating, especially in a time like now.
So we have an annual $15 billion tax fund, right? That we getting from our population, and yet and still, DC, they say, according to the statistics, not me, it says that the average medium household net worth of African Americans, one report said 11,700 versus white households was 111,700. So now with DC only being like 48% African American,
46%.
46%, right? When I was growing up, it was like probably 89%, maybe 90%.
In the 1990s, it was up to 76%.
Right.
In 1990.
So
and I was born in 89, so.
Yeah, I was born in 80. So, and I, you know, what will you do? Because a lot of people don't understand how, they're not civically aware. So they don't understand how you have different committees within the city council that you can be a part of. And even though it's your first year in office, you can't lead a committee, but you can be a part of a committee. So what committees are you targeting to be a part of to change that $100 million that's allotted to addressing the wealth inequalities in our annual city budget to doubling or tripling that? What committees are strategically important to you, and who are leading these committees right now that we can hold accountable?
Yeah, so there are two committees that are critically important for that. First is the Housing Committee, which Councilmember Anita Bonds chairs. And then there's the Finance and Revenue Committee, which was chaired by Jack Evans, but Jack got booted off the council and he resigned just days before he was formally kicked off the council. So now it's being held by all of the members of the council, and lacking a specific chair other than Chairman Mendelson, who runs the council. The Housing Committee really determines all of the legislation around ensuring that seniors get a tax relief when they turn 65, ensuring that there's the homestead deduction for first-time home buyers, so that a deduction of 90,000 in the home's assessed value in terms of their taxable amount is assessed by the Office of Tax and Revenue. And then the Finance and Revenue Committee does a lot of our economic development. One thing I want to see is economic development flow from not just the big companies in the district. Typically, when we do a tax increment financing, we do a 50, 80, $100 million bond that we take from future tax revenue. I think that model could be brought to our smaller business owners. If you own a hair salon, if you're a tailor, you have a bar, a restaurant, a tea shop, and you're trying to grow your business, the future tax proceeds should be able to be borrowed up front so that you can continue to grow and expand your business, or buy your building that you're in. People shouldn't be a business owner and a renter for 30 years. They need to have an opportunity to buy, and the city should step up and create those opportunities.
Exactly. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal last night about how during this COVID-19 process, they created a loophole for businesses to be able to count their future losses against like their taxes now, whereas there's like a loophole to where they'll say like they can count their past losses 2 years back and future losses 20 years up. Right. And to be able to not to be able to get like rebates now. So I think like what has made me, because I've only been home for a year, right? But what has made me
it's crazy the impact you've had in 1 year, man. You like the man of the city in 1 year.
I think what helped that was that investing so much time into civic awareness and how the economics of the nation and the world works. So by us both being 40 and under, right? I'll be 40 this year, but right now we under 40.
You still in the club.
40, right. How can we use technology, right, to make the citizens, especially those in Ward 6, 7, and 8, more civically aware and civically engaged? Because once you become civically aware, you become civically engaged. So how can we use the modern day technologies or art to inform and empower our citizens?
I think that's a great point, and I really love the piece behind you, because
that's
especially
that's Mansa Musa, right? Yeah, that's Mansa Musa. That's $1 trillion bill, Mansa Musa.
From Mali?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I think right now, I was talking with a friend earlier about how Barack Obama was really our first digital candidate and had record-breaking turnout from young people as a consequence, which is one of the great things that helped propel him to win this election in 2008. So right now, we're at a moment that we're at the height of our technological advancement in society, and our city government, I think here in DC, has done a great job doing Facebook Live and Twitter Live every day at these coronavirus conferences, but that should be every day. Our city council hearings are on DC TV. I don't even know how to get that channel on my television, but I do know how to access my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook, my LinkedIn account. These should be simulcast over all of these different channels so that anytime I'm interested to know what the council committee of the whole is doing, I should be able to just log in and see what bills are marking up, what bills are making changes to. And that's a kind of technological leap forward we need to start investing in. Because when you have this kind of pandemic situation, you can't be there in person, you can't go to a public hearing, you need to be able to testify. And right now, they're only taking testimony through written letters or through emails. We need to be able to video conference in and talk to our elected officials.
Beautiful. I agree. Being as though DC has had a history, like it's a book that was written called Locking Up Our Own, right?
Who wrote that?
Jane Foreman. It won a Pulitzer Prize, right? And it just talks about how DC has a history of having African American elected officials, and how those officials pretty much contributed to the systemic displacement of hundreds of thousands of citizens through incarceration.
Right.
And through this man, because DC had the highest murder rate per capita of any city in the nation
in the 90s.
But it also had the highest incarceration rate of any city in the world into the 2000s, right?
Right.
So what would you say to the young citizens today who look at how gentrification is impacting their communities in Saratoga and Berry Farms, and they like, well, we elected Muriel Bowser, right? This is a woman and of African American descent. We elected Anthony Williams. We elected Adrian Fenty. But this is what we have gotten in return is gentrification. What message do you have for them that you won't be like those who are currently or previously been in office and are, by most accounts, aiding and abetting the cosmopolitan makeover of the District of Columbia that doesn't include poor people, and most poor citizens in the district happen to be African American.
So I wouldn't say that, you know, there's necessarily any coordination in their efforts, because for us as citizens, it's not enough to just elect the people that we want in to do the job of being a public servant, to make the hard decisions. We also got to step up and take care of our communities and demand from our elected officials what we want to see from our communities, as well as help them create what we want in our communities. When we talk about our most violence-ridden or our communities that struggle the most with violent crime, part of the solution isn't solely relying on the police, getting more police into communities. It's really getting stronger communities together. That's creating jobs, good paying jobs for parents so that they have the opportunity to pay for good, affordable childcare. They have the ability to take care of their kids because they can take time off work. These all have an impact. Keeping fathers at home so that they're young people. And I want you to tell some of your story so that we know that young people who have their families at home, have good structure, have after-school programs, have sports, are less likely to get involved in criminal activity and get caught up in the system. If you could tell us just your background and your perspective, because you understand more about the system than I do, and you can kind of shed light on what are the circumstances that lead people to serving time in prison, and how can we keep our next generation with their head above water, playing sports, doing the arts, doing positive things in their community that'll help them pursue their dreams.
For me, always academically inclined. I would go to school.
Where'd you go to elementary school?
I went to Kingsman Elementary in Northeast in Ward 6. I took my pre-SATs when I was 11. I was taking classes at Howard University when I was 11. And once my dad left my life due to his drug addiction, because up until that point it was home, school, mosque, and boxing with Ham, you know. So I kind of like had the structure. And
what boxing gym did you go to?
Ham, at that time, Ham AC was training up Elliott Junior High School. So Elliott had a recreation. And then like right there in 91, when the murders went up, 91, 92, it was cut in funds for recreation. So the Elliott gym was gone. Ham was no longer training up there. And my dad was gone. And you know, while my dad being gone and me being like 11, 12, I became more hyper aware of poverty and fashion and wanting to fit in and wanting to get things. So instead of me just being content with being me, I felt like I had to play this role to get these cars and these things and clothes, and I started selling drugs. And I really didn't have to sell drugs.
At what age?
At 12.
Wow.
At 12. So when people see like the entrepreneurial spirit that I have in the art world today, I be like, I had it then. It's just that I didn't have anyone to guide me towards the arts, you know, and towards other legal entrepreneurial things to do at that time. So through that experience there, getting involved with selling drugs, I end up, man, getting charged for a murder, for being present for a murder that happened that I really wasn't present for. They never said that I killed anyone. They just said that I was with someone that did it. And by me refusing to cooperate with the government to apprehend the person who they alleged who did the shooting, they took me to trial as an unarmed aiding and abetting accomplice of felony murder, convicted me, and gave me 2 life sentences at the age of 16. So,
how long were you in court from the first day you got arrested to the day that the judge rendered the sentence?
About like a year and a half. I got locked up in January 1997.
So you were locked up the whole time that you were going through the court process?
At DC jail.
They never set a bond?
No.
Wow. No. For a 16-year-old?
As a juvenile.
That's
at the
crazy.
Adult DC jail.
That's crazy.
And convicted me, gave me two indeterminate life sentences of 40 to life and 20 to life. And then sent me to adult Lorton Maximum Security Facility. I was 17. And then from there, just federal institutions as far away as California and Oklahoma.
No way.
And so, you know, and I served 22 years. And my thing is using the arts, using my artwork and my creativity to write poetry and do spoken word and do photography and do paintings and write stories and do films, do all of these things that gives a complete picture of my life and how my life is no different from your life.
Right.
And the next person's life is just a matter of what zip code we grew up in,
right,
what type of parenting situation we had, you
right,
know, and to show the beautiful thing that I like about the COVID-19 crisis is that everybody is getting the opportunity to see how horrific it is to be confined, even within the confines of your own home.
Right. And this ain't 1/10, 1/20th of what you had to go through.
Exactly. But people still feel the anxiety,
right,
of being confined, and using that to create things to not just to make people empathetic or sympathetic, but to get people to develop an empathy that leads to direct action, to change law and policy. And as you said, not just thinking that we can elect someone and that's it, right? No, we must elect someone,
and then we got to work together.
Civically aware, civically engaged, work with you through the process, understanding the committees, attending the hearings, providing testimony, encouraging enlightening other people about the process, and then, you know, ultimately creating a culture to where though we don't have it like now, as though like if a politician does something that we don't like or don't do something that we want done, it's like we feel powerless. But understanding the democratic process to be able to hold them accountable. Even in DC, we can create our own ballot initiatives, right?
That's correct.
So, you know, we're not just a powerless citizenry, just really understanding this process and use, for me as an artist, I use my art, right? And if a person, whatever, fitness or whatever they do, real estate developers, use the tools that you have to become civically aware and civically engaged and to empower yourself and your household and your community to take charge of your own affairs and not just be relying on the government to rectify your matters. Because when you do, then we have things in place like police officers trying to enforce social distancing, which is really not like a good mix, you know, in our communities. You know, this is more should be like a medical thing, a community-driven thing, and we shouldn't have to rely on law enforcement to come in to enforce something like that on a medical status. But in closing,
I say this: law enforcement, it's not their job to improve anybody's lives. Right. So the more that they intervene, the less likely that person is able to pursue their dreams and enjoy their freedoms as a citizen. So if we think that the police are going to solve problems of crime in our community, that's not the case. You went in and through the blessing of God, you become an incredible orator, inspiration to a lot of people. I'm your big fan. I'm a big supporter, and I know thousands of other people at least are just in this area. We want more young people to learn from you, to see you, and I want to get you in front of some of the young people that I work with in the Adams Morgan community to understand and see that when you're young, you have a lot of your life ahead of you, that you need to stay on track with art, with athletics, with your academics, with your passions, because once law enforcement gets involved, you know, you lose your freedom, you lose your time,
Yeah.
you know, and you get locked down in quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely, it's no social distancing in prison. You know, right now
And
the highest death rates
that's what I was
in
about to
our
say.
nation for COVID-19
In
is
our
in
prison
nursing homes
population.
and prisons.
Right.
So, you know, man, I held you past the time.
Now, I'm happy to talk to you, man.
Yeah.
One thing I want to know is, what do you want the District of Columbia to do about not having a prison here directly in this area? I mean, our closest federal prison was Lorton, and that shut down.
Right.
So what do you think is the best solution? Because we also had a jail here that you could serve longer than 1 year sentences that we don't have anymore.
Right.
So how can we keep people close to their family?
First and foremost, as a former jailhouse lawyer who has and continued to study the Constitution obsessively, I believe that all prisons and jails that I have experienced in America.
How many prisons were you in your 22 years?
Probably like 11
That's
or 12.
crazy. So they moved you every 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
why? Because they didn't want you to have friends?
I just, you know, when you from DC and you in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, they don't like incarcerated people from DC. So I had a situation where some guys from DC had got into a fight on the yard. And what they did was, even though I was in my unit, they came the next morning and locked me down, and amongst about probably like 50 to 100 other people from DC, and just shipped me to California, shipped another guy to Mississippi, shipped another person to Indiana. You know, they just group us all in together, and they get off on, they have a sadistic relationship on sending us away from home, because they just don't like us. They feel like we should never be in the system. They feel like we're not federal convictees, so they feel like we mess up their system. So for me, I believe that as the prisons are built and operated, it's cruel and unusual punishment. It's violating the Eighth Amendment protections against cruel and unusual punishment. So if we do build a space in the DC area to house those who have committed an offense, it cannot look like any prison that exists in America today. Right. It has to be a space that is, from the architecture of it, to the building of it, to the people who are on administration and employed, it has to be completely done by the community, by people who have served time, people who family members are serving time who will be in these spaces. It can't just be this third-party state-created space that just warehouses people and treated people as some type of category of subhumans, as the prisons do today. And so that's how I feel about it. Whether it's far or close, it cannot be what we have today. And if we need an example, if we lack imagination and innovation in this area, then we can travel. I think we need to get a delegation in the district to travel with organizations like Vera Institute and Arnold Ventures, and go to the prisons in Germany and Norway and Sweden, which are Western developed nations of European,
with more humane,
with a more humane, rehabilitative, therapeutic approach.
That's what we need.
But we can't have what we have today, because 7 out of 10 people come back with a new offense within 1 to 10 years. So we already know that
recidivism is part of the plan.
it's a system that's failing us, and as taxpayers who are investing into this,
Right.
we have a right to demand that we get something different. Because if it's about public safety and you're pushing out a product that's repeating the same threat to public safety 7 out of 10 times, right, then it's a problem,
So finally, after 22 years, how and why were you released?
I was released because Kenyon McDuffie, along with the help of the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, wrote a legislation known as Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act. And within this act, it had a provision that allowed any person who was convicted of an offense that was committed while they were under the age of 18, that after they served 20 years in prison, that they can petition the courts for resentencing and release. So that law was enacted in April 4th, 2017.
Did you ever think you were coming home before that act was passed?
Oh yeah, I was actively constantly like litigating my case before the Superior Court, the Court of Appeals, federal courts, U.S. Supreme Court. I always was litigating. I always was like, advocating. I published 11 books while I was incarcerated.
Wow.
So I was actively,
That's incredible.
Actively engaged with just getting my story out there and advocating for the abolishment of the prison system as it stands today, but in particular, children who were given life sentences and long sentences under the age of 18. So I always knew that I was coming out, and that's why I was prepared to do what I've been doing for this last year, once I had the opportunity to get out,
Well, inshallah, we win this election. We get that delegation together. We study design. We study nations that do it right, that are rehabilitative to their prison population. And we can improve our community because, as you said, people pay for public safety, and we want people who are serving sentences to get better. That's not the case. That's not the reality today. And that's the future we should be able to build here in D.C.
Exactly. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you once everything open up.
Absolutely.
And, enjoy the fast. Eat something good tonight. Drink some water.
Yep.
I know I'm dehydrated. I'm hungry. I got some lamb up there. And
that's what I had last night, lamb. Tonight we're doing smoked salmon.
Whew. Everything sounds good when you ain't.
Everything sounds good at this
when you
time.
haven't eaten since 4 in the morning. And
Well,
it's 7:30.
I missed suhoor this morning. I didn't eat this morning, so haven't eaten since yesterday.
Thank you, bro, for your time.
Thank you.
See you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.